Welcome to Digital Law, Learning Unit 6. Our learning outcomes is to define digital law, explain ethical issues within society, explain ethical and legal issues within business, discuss the various digital laws in South Africa and internationally, and describe illegal and unethical digital activities. Let's get started in your module manual. So firstly, we need to look at the definition of digital law. It's defined as the electronic responsibility for actions, deeds, which is either ethical and unethical. So what they mean by ethical and unethical would be, it defines an ethical issue as a problem or situation that requires a person or organization to choose between alternatives or that must be evaluated as right or wrong, being ethical or unethical. So when you're conducting yourself online in the internet space, is something you're doing there unethical or is it illegal? And then we need to be very careful between choosing an unethical issue or an ethical sort of issue there and a legal issue. The minute we're bordering on something that is a legal issue, it will involve a sense of law. Therefore, we should be very responsible as a digital citizen of how we conduct ourselves on not doing any unethical or illegal activity. So what exactly is an ethical issue? In the textbook, they give some examples there, and they're talking about how it could have copyright access and infringement, privacy and security, where you could be infringing on someone else's privacy, maybe identity theft, and also pornography. And that just because you are maybe engaging in pornography that you haven't paid for, that it can also be an illegal issue, such as child pornogaphy. The next section we look at is socio-cultural impacts and how you can impact in terms of a digital society. They start off by saying that businesses used to report namely their profit out there, but now they need to take into account sustainability. So nowadays, businesses in particular need to take into account socio-cultural, which means the people, the economic, and the environment, and need to focus on more eco-friendly ideas and the environment in their businesses. Therefore, take into account the people. The next section they talk about is thinking about how does technology impact on socio-cultural? How does it impact on the people? And they're saying that with digital media being so readily available and consumed, the information transfer is increasing rapidly. And there are impacts that may arise from digital socialization. So you can read through that in the module manual, all the different examples and impacts of digital socialization. I'll just mention one here being privacy, for example. And the issue of privacy in terms of all the changes of technology and how that you might share online, but that you will be losing that privacy by sharing online. And you'll also be including other people that wouldn't necessarily want you to share. An example also would be you're sharing on Facebook, and then your employer sees that what your weekend activities were, and these can have an influence in terms of the society where you might lose your job because of that. Another example is crime. The internet has made it easier for criminals to find potential victims and sort of embed themselves in that society online as well. Okay, let's look at the legal issues. Legal issues going back to privacy and privacy agreements. Nowadays, you might find that on certain websites they'll say, will you share, accept these cookies? Will you put in your location, or not exactly put in it, but will you allow to share your location? You don't always have to say yes. Now, it may say like, okay, especially in those IOL websites, I believe, they'll say, just share your location, and you don't have to always put where it is, where you are, or you can just say no, just so that you can limit your digital footprint in that sense and not give out so much information about yourself, because they're going to use all the information that you put out there online for advertising, and it can transfer on social media. So in this section, they're just talking about we tend to give out personal information and that this can be used for personalized advertising that comes out later. Another aspect of privacy and legal issues is digital surveillance. There are CCTV cameras all over watching us while we instantly walk around, going about our business, and websites are tracking our online behavior. Later, we talk about the tracking of behavior online, could be personalized advertising. So have you ever gone onto, say, Takealot, and you're looking at sports equipment as an example? Then you go into Facebook and they're showing ads about sports equipment that you were looking for, like kettlebells and workout gear. Then you go into social media and there's all this different businesses selling workout gear. How did they know? Maybe it's a sign. No, it's not. Someone is tracking what you're doing online. They're taking all that information of your web browsing and they're spreading it around on social media, on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter, to bombard you with those ads so that you can be tracked and your activity tracked. So you need to be very careful because you are being watched. Okay, and then they have some examples in the module manual that you and your lecturer can read of an international scandal unfolding. And the next section that I'm going to be looking at now is the ethical and legal issues within businesses. So we have some ethical and legal issues that can occur between an employee and the company, such as the employee's legal responsibilities towards the company in terms of protecting the company's digital technology, the content that's on there. Those are all the legal responsibilities that when you work for a company, you actually need to protect the digital content that's there. So if you have Amazon's passwords and how they run their companies, those are all responsible legal issues with it between you and the company and also the technology that you're using. The ethical issues is the ethical use of the company's technology. So you may be not doing any illegal activity, but you're playing games. So you're kind of being unethical. You're not using the technology provided by the company for its intended purpose. Another thing is to use the company's digital content a different way, or use of technology in relation to other staff. So you're sending out emails, so you're not using it for its intended purposes. So that's between the employees and the company. The company as an employer has a legal responsibility to protect itself from cyber harassment. Employees' confidential information should be protected within the company's digital network and ensure that there is surveillance to a very limited degree. The ethical responsibilities from an employee in the company is the prevention of unethical surveillance, not surveying our personal emails, for example, protecting our rights as an individual, health and ergonomics, making sure that we have the right office equipment, the right chairs, the right keyboard size, the right computer away from our eyes for eye strain, and monitoring of our social media should not be happening at all, things like that. So there is also responsibility of legal and ethical issues there. Other things that border on unethical from an employer and the company is to monitor your company phone, to have your emails monitored, to have GPS, the company's cell phones being monitored, and so on. The company and the consumer, what are the ethical issues there? There needs to be ethical digital advertising, like we saw with the McDonald's ad, which is that what you put on the TV, that ad needs to portray some sort of realistic product when we get it, so that we can say, yes, it's just like, what you had been transparent about before. So there needs to be ethical digital communication, ethical marketing tactics, and so on. The legal issues, however, is that sometimes there can be sort of illegal issues there with transparent advertising, no spamming of our information that we give you, things like that, and protection of any digital consumer information provided. The next section looks at business and society. Once again, we need to consider that businesses need to be eco-friendly, they need to consider the environment, and need to take into account the digital technology practices and how they impact on society. They also need to take into account that the world has become quite smaller due to globalization and need to be aware of all cultural and social norms of the population. Therefore, there needs to be an understanding of how they advertise towards cultures and the humor in their digital campaigns and their overall digital footprint. So what they're talking about here is that businesses need to be very careful how they use social media, how they address the environment, not to be wasteful, to be very considerate, like Woolworths and their new wooden spoons. And as well as that they need to be very sensitive in terms of how they're portraying culture and how they are approaching culture in their ads. I know Nando's doesn't care that much what they say, but then most businesses need to be very careful what they put out there in terms of all the examples that you could find. And I have put this in your lesson plan to look at business transparency and how business communicate to the society, and maybe how they've gotten in trouble with what they have said and what they've put out there, such as the H&M campaigns. And I think Country Road also did do something in the past, and how businesses can get in a lot of trouble if they're not being legal and ethical and so on. In the next clip, we're going to be looking at South African digital law, and then we'll be concluding with other illegal cybercrimes. See you in the next clip.